Welcome to DRM News Podcast. We're diving back into the Tupac Shakur murder case.
Oh, yeah.
It's been almost 30 years, and this case is suddenly making headlines again.
Yeah.
With the arrest of Duane Keffe D. Davis.
It's pretty remarkable. This case has been cold for so long.
Right.
Fueled by speculation and all those conspiracy theories. To see an actual arrest, especially someone like Keffe who's been connected to the case for years,
Right.
it's a huge development.
Exactly. And it's not just the arrest.
Right.
Davis's defense team is throwing some serious curveballs,
Yeah.
trying to delay the trial just weeks before it's set to start.
Oh, wow. They're certainly pulling out all the stops.
Okay.
Let's start with the basics for our listeners.
Yeah.
Tupac was shot in Las Vegas back in September of 1996.
Right.
While riding with Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, she died 6 days later.
A tragic end to a hip-hop icon, for sure.
For sure.
But what makes Keffe D such a key figure in all of this?
Well, he's not just some peripheral figure. Keffe D was a prominent gang leader at the time.
Right.
And he's actually admitted to being in the car involved in the shooting.
Wait, he admitted it?
Yeah.
Openly?
He did. Not only in his memoir, Compton Street Legend,
Wow.
but in various interviews over the years. He even claimed to have provided the gun used to kill Tupac.
Okay, hold on. So if he's already admitted to providing the murder weapon and being at the scene, why wasn't he arrested sooner?
That's the big question. It seems authorities always felt they lacked the concrete evidence
Really?
to tie him directly to the crime. It seems his own words weren't enough until recently.
So what changed? Why now after all these years?
It's still a bit unclear. Some speculate that new evidence has come to light,
Okay.
maybe corroborating his earlier statements or connecting him more definitively to the shooting.
But now that he's finally been arrested and charged,
Uh-huh.
you'd think this would be an open and shut case, right?
You'd think so, especially with his admissions.
Yeah.
But that's where things take a turn towards the unbelievable.
Okay, let's get into these curveballs you mentioned.
Right.
What are Davis's lawyers claiming?
They're hitting the prosecution from multiple angles. First, they claim to have found alibi witnesses who can place Davis outside of Las Vegas at the time of the shooting.
An alibi witness appearing almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
That sounds a little far-fetched, doesn't it?
It definitely raises eyebrows. You have to wonder about the credibility of a witness emerging after all this time.
Right.
Are they reliable? What's their connection to the case? These are questions the prosecution will undoubtedly be asking.
It sounds like they're grasping at straws. But what else are they arguing?
Here's where it gets really interesting. They're not just claiming Davis is innocent.
Okay.
They're suggesting someone else entirely orchestrated the shooting.
Oh, wow.
They're talking about interviewing witnesses who can support this alternative suspect theory.
So they're trying to shift the blame.
Yeah.
Do they have any names or leads?
They're being very tight-lipped about the specifics.
Oh, really?
They haven't named this alleged mastermind. It seems like a classic defense strategy.
Okay.
Create doubt, muddy the waters, and hope the jury gets confused enough to acquit.
It's a bold strategy for sure.
It is.
But you have to have some evidence to back it up, right?
Right.
Otherwise, it just sounds like empty accusations.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be watching closely for.
Okay.
What concrete evidence, if any, do they have to support this alternative suspect claim? If they can't produce anything substantial, it could backfire.
So we have an alibi witness who appears out of thin air.
Right.
And a mystery suspect they're refusing to name. Is there anything else?
Oh, there's more. They're also digging up some old immunity agreements.
Okay.
Davis supposedly made with federal and local prosecutors years ago.
Right.
Their argument is that these agreements should shield him from the current charges.
Wait, hold on. So he's claiming he was granted immunity for a murder he allegedly committed years later.
That's the gist of it. It's a bit of a legal head-scratcher.
Yeah.
It all hinges on the specifics of those agreements.
Right.
What exactly did they cover? When were they made? And were they limited to certain crimes or time frames?
It's got to be a real legal battle to see if these immunity claims hold any water.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the prosecution isn't backing down.
Okay.
They're adamant that these agreements, even if they exist, were limited in scope and wouldn't apply to something as serious as murder.
This is already more complicated than I imagined.
It is.
We have a possible alibi, a mysterious suspect, and now immunity claims.
Yeah.
What else could they possibly throw at the prosecution?
Believe it or not, there's one more twist.
Okay, go ahead.
They're raising questions about Tupac's medical condition after the shooting.
What do you mean? Everyone knows he was shot multiple times. Is this about the quality of care he received?
That's one interpretation.
Okay.
They're arguing that Tupac was initially stable after the shooting, but then suddenly died a week later in the hospital.
Oh, wow. They've brought in medical experts to examine potential alternative causes of death. Are they implying medical malpractice? Or that something else happened in the hospital that led to his death?
They're being deliberately vague on that point.
Okay.
It seems like their goal is to introduce enough doubt to make the jury question the entire chain of events leading to Tupac's death.
It's a risky strategy. It's one thing to challenge witness testimony or poke holes in the prosecution's timeline.
Yeah.
But to question the cause of death when the autopsy clearly shows he died from gunshot wounds.
Right.
That seems like a real long shot.
It does. But remember, the defense doesn't necessarily need to prove anything definitively.
Okay.
They just need to create enough doubt to make the jury hesitant to convict.
It sounds like the prosecution has their work cut out for them.
Yeah.
They were probably hoping for a much more straightforward case.
I think it's safe to say that this is turning out to be anything but straightforward. The prosecution was likely banking on Davis's own admissions being a key part of their case. But now they have to contend with all these challenges from the defense.
It's incredible how a case this old can suddenly become so complex.
It is.
I'm hooked. Where do we go from here?
Well, all of this is leading up to a crucial hearing.
Okay.
Where the judge will decide whether to delay the trial, as the defense has requested. That's where things could really get interesting.
I can't wait to see what happens. We'll definitely need to dive deeper into that hearing and what it could mean for the case moving forward.
Absolutely. Welcome back to DRM News Podcast. We left off talking about that upcoming hearing and all the legal maneuvering surrounding it. But let's shift gears for a moment.
Okay.
And dive into one of the most compelling aspects of this case.
Right.
The East Coast-West Coast rivalry that was raging in the hip-hop world back then.
Yes. That's the part that has always fascinated me. How much did this rivalry really play into Tupac's death? Was this a targeted hit fueled by that tension?
It's impossible to ignore the context.
Right.
This wasn't just a random act of violence. It happened at the peak of one of the most intense and public feuds in music history. You had Tupac, this outspoken, almost larger-than-life figure, representing Death Row Records and the West Coast.
And on the other side, you had Biggie Smalls, a.k.a. the notorious B.I.G.,
Exactly.
the East Coast Titan from Bad Boy Records.
Their rivalry wasn't just about music.
Right.
It was about regional Pride Street credibility and ultimately power.
Yeah.
They traded diss tracks through verbal jabs in interviews.
Yeah.
And their entourages reportedly clashed on multiple occasions.
Wow.
It felt like things were constantly escalating.
Right.
A powder keg waiting to explode.
And tragically, it did explode not once, but twice.
Yeah.
Biggie was murdered just 6 months after Tupac, also in a drive-by shooting.
Which, of course, deepened the mystery and fueled all sorts of conspiracy theories.
Right.
Was Tupac's murder a retaliation for something that happened in this rivalry?
Yeah.
Did the same people target Biggie? Or were these separate incidents stemming from completely different motives?
It's a tangled web, for sure.
Yeah.
But focusing back on Keffe D and his recent claims,
Right.
where does his alternative suspect theory fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Are they suggesting this mystery person was connected to the East Coast scene?
That's what's so intriguing. The defense is being very cagey about this alleged suspect's identity. We don't know if they're trying to implicate someone from Biggie's camp.
Okay.
Point to a personal beef Tupac might have had outside of the rivalry, or introduce someone entirely new to the narrative.
So it's a strategic move to create doubt,
Yeah.
but it also feels like they're holding back a lot of information.
It does.
Are they bluffing? Or do they really have something substantial?
We'll have to wait and see what they reveal in court. Remember, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The defense can throw out as many theories as they want,
Yeah.
but if they can't back them up with evidence, it won't sway a jury.
Speaking of evidence, those immunity agreements are still a major wild card. Could they actually be enough to derail the entire case against Keffe D?
It's a long shot, but not impossible.
Okay.
If those agreements are as broad as the defense claims,
Right.
and the judge rules in their favor, it could throw a wrench in the prosecution's plans, regardless of how compelling their other evidence might be.
But surely there are limits to immunity rests. You can't just get a free pass for any crime you might commit in the future.
You'd think so, but the legal system can be quite complex.
Yeah.
It will depend on the precise wording of those agreements. the circumstances under which they were made,
Right.
and the specific laws in place at the time. It'll be a battle of legal interpretation.
It seems like the defense is trying to exploit every loophole and technicality they can find.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? Even if these legal maneuvers work, does that mean Keffe D is truly innocent?
That's a crucial point. Legal maneuvering and actual guilt are two different things. The defense's goal is to get their client acquitted,
Right.
regardless of whether he was involved in the crime or not.
So even if he walks free, it doesn't necessarily mean we'll finally have the answer to who killed Tupac.
Exactly. This trial might bring some clarity to Keffe D's role,
Okay.
but it's unlikely to solve the entire mystery. There are too many unanswered questions,
Right.
too many conflicting accounts,
Huh.
and too much time has passed.
Which brings us back to the East Coast-West Coast rivalry.
All right.
Let's dig into that a bit deeper. What were the roots of this conflict?
Okay.
Was it all just hype and media sensationalism? Or were there genuine tensions behind the scenes?
It was definitely a complex mix of factors. The rivalry had its roots in the growing divide between the East and West Coast hip-hop scenes.
Okay.
Back then, the music industry was very regionally focused. New York had its sound, LA had its sound,
Right.
and there wasn't much crossover.
And then you had the media, always eager to amplify any conflict or drama.
Absolutely. They played a significant role in fueling the rivalry.
Right.
Every diss track, every public disagreement
Yeah.
was blown up into a major event, turning what might have been isolated incidents into a narrative of all-out war between the coasts.
It's like they were creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
In a way,
Wow.
yes. And don't forget the role of record labels.
Right.
They were often deeply involved in these feuds, seeing them as a way to boost sales and generate publicity for their artists.
It's easy to forget that behind all the bravado and posturing,
Right.
there's a business side to all of this.
Always. But the rivalry wasn't just manufactured hype.
Okay.
There were real tensions, real resentments, and a sense of competition for resources recognition,
Yeah.
and ultimately dominance in the hip-hop world.
And within this already volatile environment, you had these two incredibly charismatic and influential figures,
Yeah.
Tupac and Biggie,
Right.
at the center of it all.
It was a recipe for disaster.
They were both incredibly talented artists,
Huh.
but their personalities, their backgrounds, their approaches to music
Yeah.
were so different. It was almost inevitable that their paths would collide.
And tragically, that collision had fatal consequences, not just for them,
Yeah.
but for the entire hip-hop community.
It cast a long shadow over the industry.
Right.
A reminder of the dark side of fame, the dangers of unchecked rivalry, and the devastating impact of violence.
It's a legacy that continues to haunt us today,
Yeah,
even as we celebrate the music and the cultural impact of these iconic figures.
absolutely. And as we delve deeper into the specifics of Keffe D's case,
Right.
it's crucial to keep this historical context in mind. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry might not directly answer the question of who pulled the trigger,
Okay.
but it provides a crucial backdrop for understanding the motives, the allegiances, and the potential suspects involved.
It's a reminder that this case isn't just about legal technicalities and courtroom drama.
It's about the human cost of conflict, the complexities of the music industry,
Yeah.
and the enduring search for justice and closure in a case that has gripped the public's imagination for decades. Welcome back to the RM News Podcast. We've been unpacking this tangled web that is the Tupac Shakur murder case.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting more and more complex.
Well, layers to this onion for sure.
We've got these legal challenges flying around, alibi witnesses, mystery suspects,
Right.
immunity claims, and even questions about the cause of death.
It's a lot.
And it all comes to a head at this upcoming hearing.
It does.
It feels like a make-or-break moment for both sides.
Absolutely. This hearing is crucial. The judge has some big decisions to make
Okay.
that could drastically impact how this case unfolds.
So walk us through it. What are the key issues the judge will be focusing on?
Well, the biggest issue is the defense's motion to delay the trial.
Okay.
They're arguing that they need more time to investigate these new claims they've brought up. The alibi witnesses the alternative suspect, and of course those immunity agreements.
But the prosecution must be pushing back hard against any delay.
Right? Of course. They've been working on this case for years,
Yeah.
meticulously building their argument. They want to see this go to trial as soon as possible. They'll argue that the defense is just trying to stall to buy more time.
Right.
And maybe even hoping the case will fall apart if they wait long enough.
It's a classic legal tug of war, each side jockeying for position.
Exactly. And the judge is the referee in the middle, trying to balance the rights of the defendant with the interests of the prosecution and the public.
So what are the possible outcomes here? What can we realistically expect the judge to decide?
There are a few possibilities.
Okay.
The judge could grant the defense's request for a full delay, which would give them more time to build their case, but also drag the whole process out, potentially for months.
That would be a win for the defense, but a blow to the prosecution. And definitely frustrating for Tupac's family, who have been waiting decades for some kind of resolution.
Absolutely. On the other hand, the judge could deny the delay outright, forcing the trial to proceed as originally scheduled. This would put the defense on the back foot, having to scramble to prepare their case with less time than they wanted.
So it's all or nothing then?
Not necessarily. There's also a middle ground.
Okay.
The judge could grant a partial delay, pushing back the trial by a few weeks or months. This would give the defense some extra time, but not as much as they're asking for.
That seems like the most likely scenario, a compromise that gives both sides a bit of what they want.
It's certainly possible. Judges often prefer these kinds of compromises.
Okay.
It shows they're considering all sides and trying to ensure a fair process.
So we'll be watching closely to see what the judge decides. But stepping back for a moment, this case goes beyond just legal procedures.
It really does.
It's about Tupac Shakur, a cultural icon whose music and message continue to resonate even today.
Absolutely. He wasn't just a rapper. He was a poet, an actor, an activist. Someone who spoke truth to power and gave a voice to the voiceless. His impact on music and culture is undeniable.
And the fact that his murder remains unsolved all these years later only adds to his mystique.
It does.
It's a story that continues to fascinate and intrigue people worldwide.
It speaks to the power of his legacy and the unanswered questions that still linger.
Right.
People want justice for Tupac. They want to know what truly happened that night in Las Vegas.
It's a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the senselessness of violence.
It is.
And it raises important questions about the music industry, the pressures of fame, and the darker side of success.
It's a cautionary tale. A story that continues to resonate. Because it reminds us that even those who seem larger than life are ultimately human and vulnerable.
As we wait for the next chapter in this legal saga to unfold, let's remember Tupac for good. For his artistry, his passion, and his unwavering commitment to speaking truth to power.
Absolutely. And let's hope that one day the truth about his murder will be revealed. Bringing some measure of closure to his family, his friends, and his fans all over the world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Tupac Shakur case. It's a story that's far from over, and we'll continue to follow it closely. Keep those critical thinking caps on, and we'll be back with more deep dives into the stories that matter.